Coming up on today's Locked On Dodgers, Clayton Kershaw is finally starting an all-star game, first time in his career. We are all about that, and we're going to talk about it. We are also going to discuss the home run derby and all that came with it. I was there. I can talk about my experience. Jeff will talk about his experience, and we'll talk about the winner because Juan Soto won, and Juan Soto is the big talk of baseball at the time. That's all that's on tap, so make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. If you want to find us, we are Locked On Dodgers, wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers and subscribe in all those places so you don't miss a day because you know we're not going to. This is your first time listening or watching. I'm Samperio. That is Jeff Snider. We are together today, and we're both lifelong Dodger fans that have covered the Dodgers in a variety of ways. With one of those ways now being this podcast that we are here doing every Monday through Friday. So, with that being said, let's do what we do and talk Dodgers. And starting off with probably one of your favorite topics for sure. One of my top topics, especially the way things have been going. Clayton Kershaw, because Brian Snitker did the right thing and he chose Clayton Kershaw to be his starting pitcher for the first All-Star game at Dodger Stadium since 1980. Clayton Kershaw's first All-Star game starting ever. And we'll get into Marlins fans and their anger now, but let's celebrate this situation because Clayton Kershaw will be on the mound when the game is starting on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's definitely a cause for celebration. Clayton Kershaw was the best pitcher in baseball for several years, never got to start an all-star game during that time, and we thought his time might have passed. And then this year he's saying, hey, remember me? I'm still really, really, really freaking good. And yeah, if the season ended today and we were voting on Cy Young Award, yeah, Sandy Alcantara wins it. But All-Star game has never been entirely about who had the best first 3 months of the season. The game was created in 1933 to showcase the biggest stars in baseball. And the fact is, Clayton Kershaw is a huge star. The game is at his home stadium. He's never started an All-Star game. Absolutely the right decision by Brian Snitker. I understand why Marlins fans are upset, but yeah, it's absolutely the right decision.
Yeah, and Clayton Kershaw, we talked about how before, you mentioned the other day how before it was more of a, he should do it just because it is at home and, it could be his last, whatever, blah, blah. Then Clayton Kershaw started pitching into territory of, okay, well, now he's deserving. So Clayton Kershaw, very humble in the press conference, announcing him as a starter, definitely saying there's, other guys that are worthy. Even went as far to say that he might not even deserve to be on the team, which is definitely not correct. He does deserve to be on the team for various reasons, but one of those reasons being he's very good at pitching and he's continued to be very good at pitching, and it's going to be exciting. It's everything you could ask for so far from this All-Star game, especially when it comes to the Dodgers. Other than Will Smith being snubbed, still everything else has kind of gone the Dodgers' way in a good sense. And yeah, for Kershaw, I mean, we've seen the Kershaw turn of the last few years from the super dedicated star, maybe not so much. Not that he wasn't nice, just he's super into it and maybe wasn't enjoying things as much as he could. Weight was lifted in 2020. He's been a different guy the last couple of years, and he mentioned it here still. He said, earlier in my career, I don't know if I would have appreciated it, basically, but now that he's at this point and he steps back and looks at the big picture and he appreciates it, and we appreciate Kershaw, so we appreciate him appreciating the situation and realizing it, and just letting everything come to him that's going to come to him. He's done a lot of good, not just in baseball, in the community, in life, and for it to all just come back to him in this moment, in this situation, and for him to realize it is, just anything. It's exactly what we could ask for.
Yeah, a Miami sports writer tweeted out that he was heartbroken for Sandy Alcantara because Sandy had earned this. And yeah, if you view the All-Star game as first 3 months of the season, best players, then yeah, Alcantara earned the start. But all that crap that you just mentioned, Vince, is why Clayton Kershaw has earned this start. Being a great pitcher for 15 years, being a great person, being, everything that he absolutely earned this. And yeah, and people were responding to me on Twitter saying, "Well, so you think Yadi Molina should be starting a catcher?" Yadi Molina has a 49 OPS plus this year. We're not talking about a guy having a bad season. We're talking about Clayton Kershaw having an excellent season and getting the nod over Alcantara, who's having a little bit better season, but doesn't have nearly the track record. And, I had a lot of people tell me I was a hypocrite. And they said, if the tables were turned, you'd be up in arms that Kershaw wasn't getting the start, blah, 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 blah. That has happened. We know that has happened. The Dodgers have dealt with, we as Dodger fans have dealt with Clayton Kershaw not getting a start that he deserved in the All-Star game. I wonder if we have a time machine to see what I would have thought back then. Oh, wow. If you're watching on YouTube, the time machine just popped up a tweet of mine from July 10th, 2013, when I said Kershaw's having the best season, but Harvey is the best story in New York, so he should start the game. It turns out that if you have principles and are intellectually honest and consistent, you don't have to worry about contradicting yourself out of fandom. You could be a true fan and still have principles. And my principle is the All-Star game is about the biggest stars. And in 2013, yeah, Clayton Kershaw, based on his performance 2013, deserved to start that game. Matt Harvey was the story in New York then. And, you can make a much better case for Kershaw this year than you could for Harvey in 2013, because Harvey was still a flash in the pan. And if people had known how Harvey was going to turn out, maybe they would have thought twice. Kershaw, he has the resume. He's already a first ballot Hall of Famer. There's no chance of us looking back 10 years from now and thinking, oh, can you believe they started Clayton Kershaw in that game? Clayton Kershaw's a first ballot Hall of Famer. If there's anybody, there's a chance of looking back and cringing, it's Sandy Alcantara, because yeah, while he's a very good pitcher, we don't know if he's going to stay good. We don't know if he's going to get hurt. Charlie Lee started for the National League in 1984. Charlie Lee, you ever heard of him, Vince?
No.
That's because you were born in 1991, 7 years after Charlie Lee's career ended. Charlie Lee had one more year after he started the All-Star game. There's plenty of stories of guys who started the All-Star game because they were good for 3 months, and it turns out they weren't very good. And maybe that's Alcantara, maybe it's not. But one guy we know who is very good and who's going to the Hall of Fame and is playing in his home stadium and deserves this start, Clayton Edward Kershaw. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and coming off his last start, I mean, it's just all rolling perfectly. Took the perfect game, had the viral strikeout of Ohtani with the nasty curveball. He got asked about facing Ohtani. Kershaw and is very humble and like not the Kershaw. I mean, he's usually humble, but I don't know. I felt a little bit different. He's like, I don't know. I get that guy out, but I'm gonna try to get him out. And basically said, I hope I don't mess this up too much. Basically, and it was cool to see. You could tell he was excited. We'll see little Charlie. We probably saw him. They probably showed him on the broadcast. I don't watch the broadcast of the home run derby, but I'm sure he was there. And everyone, he's old enough to realize what's happening. And yeah, it works out. Dodgers have 3 guys in the starting lineup and ready to roll.
Yeah, and I appreciate all our listeners who follow us on Twitter who retweeted and liked our tweet saying retweet if Kershaw should start, like if Kershaw should start, retweet and like, and maybe Snicker will see it. Maybe those of you who did both, maybe that's why Snicker saw it. So congratulations to all of us.
Yeah, good job, guys. All right, let's get into the home run derby and all that came with it. But first, let's talk about Blue Nile. Because if you need to build the engagement ring of your dreams, Blue Nile has the simple online tools that let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as setting style. And Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft her the perfect engagement ring, and each ring is one of a kind. And guess what? They got people on tap to help you out 24/7 if you need help building out that ring, available via phone or chat. So BlueNile.com is the perfect way to celebrate that person, that moment, and get everything in for yourself and for her. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And going on now is the Blue Nile anniversary sale. You can save up to 40% on classic fine jewelry pieces and 25% on engagement ring settings. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. Which NFL stars move betting lines the most? Starting July 18th, Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available July 18th on Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. Okay, Jeff. Home Run Derby was at Dodger Stadium on Monday. If I'm not mistaken, the first Home Run Derby at Dodger Stadium since it started in 1985, and the last time the Dodgers hosted was 1980. And Juan Soto was the winner. We'll talk about more about Juan Soto, generally speaking, in the next segment. But it was a fun derby. There was some balls hit. None cleared the pavilion, which I was surprised. Thought for sure some balls would have cleared the pavilion, especially with how hot it was. No balls cleared the pavilion, but we didn't have the Vladdy Jock round that was so crazy that one year where it was 40-39. But we had some good moments overall. Julio Rodriguez continued his ascent into stardom. He made it to the finals, ended up losing, but was the first player with 230 plus home run rounds in the first two rounds. We had Albert Pujols, Theo Albert pulling the big upset of Kyle Schwarber in the first round, the 8 seed over the 1 seed, the old man over the younger man. And we had just a lot of baseballs being hit into the pavilion and into the field level. Don't remember if any. I don't think any hit the Loge level. But yeah, for this event, since they made the change a few years ago, it's been fun. It continued to be fun. And yeah, if you were at Dodger Stadium, hope you enjoyed it. If you watched it at home, hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, that's where we're at. And Jeff, you can take it where you want from here.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think it was really cool that Julio Rodriguez did so well. He's a guy, Seattle, it's kind of an interesting situation the Mariners are always in because they're so far removed from everything else. Like the Mariners aren't anybody's second favorite team. If you're not a Mariners fan, you barely know the Mariners exist. And I don't mean that as
favorite team.
Well, that's because of Ken Griffey Jr. and and maybe there is some of that, but basically since A-Rod left, they used to have Griffey and Randy Johnson and A-Rod, and it was a lot of fun. And then they had Ichiro, and so there's like a targeted fan base, but a lot of people just kind of forget the Mariners exist, and that's why Ty France had such a hard time getting onto the All-Star team, even though he's having an excellent season, because, if you're not a Mariners follower, then you're probably like, oh yeah, I think I heard of Ty France. Okay. But if you actually pay attention, oh yeah, he's having a great season. It was good that he got on the team. And so Julio Rodriguez, we've seen it. Ken Griffey Jr., Ichiro, A-Rod, all these guys came up as rookies with the Mariners and became huge stars. So it's possible. But I think this was something for Julio. I like J-Rod is that name, to kind of jumpstart that for him. So I thought that was really cool. Even though he didn't win. And it's funny how the biggest stories hardly ever win. You had the Vlad Jock round, and who won that home run derby? Pete Alonso, right? I think that was Alonso's first year. Yeah, the Josh Hamilton year. Who won that? Justin Morneau. So every year the biggest story is hardly ever the person who wins it. Soto this year might be it was kind of funny because Soto had the easiest path to the finals for sure. He got Jose Ramirez in the first round, and it was kind of so I listened to the first round on the radio. I was on my way home from my son's baseball game, and on MLB Network they did like the little voiceover promos for each person. It's like Pete Alonso, 2-time defending champion. He is built for this event. Corey Seager, former World Series MVP, has hit a ton of home runs in Dodger Stadium, and he is coming in hot, having homered in 5 straight games recently. Jose Ramirez, the fewest home runs of anybody in the field, and he averages only 394 feet per home run. It was like everybody else, they're talking him up, and Jose Ramirez is like, yeah, he's tiny and he sucks. And, obviously Jose Ramirez doesn't suck, but he's not built for a home run derby. And he lost to Juan Soto. And then in the second round, Juan Soto got Albert Pujols, who my prediction all along, I've got a receipt for this. I don't have a screenshot of it, but I told somebody I expect Albert Pujols to win his first round and then have age catch up with him. And my friend's reply was actually, well, the only way Albert wins the first round is if Schwarber craps the bed. And we were both right. Schwarber really, really underperformed. Albert was able to squeak through to the second round. And so Soto got that. So Soto's path to the finals was really easy. But he went up against J-Rod, and he had to put up a good show. And he did. He hit some really impressive home runs, a lot of fun home runs, and probably more opposite field home runs than anybody else in the field. Didn't hit a ton of opposite field home runs, but definitely more than anybody else we saw. And on the broadcast, they were actually talking about how Soto is such a good hitter. Like, he can't lay off. He sees a pitching or batting practice. He's like, oh, I can hit that to the left field, center field gap for a double. It's like, that's not what you're doing here, Juan. Just lay off it, take the pitch, and get when you can pull. But he hit some oppo ones, and it's before we hit record, we were talking about how I said Juan Soto isn't exactly made for the home run derby because he is such a good hitter. And he does have a ton of power. He's got a huge swing when he wants to, but he also is just a great hitter, and not all great hits are home runs. And, Pete Alonso, I expected him to win because he is built for this event and he knows how to win. And it was cool to see him lose, even though I would have been happy to see him win. But I think J-Rod against Soto was probably my dream final, and it was cool that it happened.
Yeah, J-Rod, it just lends itself already to next year because the game's in Seattle next year. So, the redemption story is already there built in for him. Yeah, I mean, he was one where he went first both times in the first two rounds. So his 30 home runs, he didn't know, he maybe tired himself out a little bit, but he didn't really have a choice. He kind of had to play it that way, where Soto was second, I think, both times when he went. So he got to, he knew exactly what he needed. So it was a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, it was fun. It was, interesting to see it in person. It was weird just because I'm so used to it being nighttime all the time when the home run derby is going on, like at the actual event, because it's usually either, whatever. Even last year in Colorado, it got dark a little bit earlier because they're, had a little bit of a time difference. So it was weird to, like, the derby was over and it was still kind of sunlight out. And I was like, that feels weird, but it was fun to watch. It was fun to be there. Real quick on the other side. So they had media day before the derby earlier in the day. And, I got to walk around and for work asking questions. But my question for most of the people, most of the players, was, which one of your teammates do you think would do best in the home run derby? And I got to ask Tyler Anderson, Gonsolin, Trey Turner, Mookie Betts, and I think that's it, not Freddie. And they all said the same two names, Will Smith and Max Muncy, which to me was interesting. Max Muncy, obviously, he already has done well in the home run derby, even though he didn't make it out of the first round or whatever it was, but he had a pretty nice round for himself. But Will Smith just doesn't, and I've talked about this, I think, in one of my solo parts, where he just doesn't strike me as the guy for the derby. I think because his swing is just not as violent as some other swings that I usually do well in the derby. But yeah, that was interesting to me that they all mentioned him. And I haven't really watched BP in a while for the Dodgers. I'm usually there that early, but I'm not really paying attention during BP. So, maybe he's put on some shows during BP. I don't know.
Yeah, that was interesting to me too, because, like, Will Smith, it's kind of interesting. Both of my sons have, in the last few years, individually on their own, without any prodding from me or from each other, come to me and said, so I was watching Will Smith swing, and it's just so simple. I feel like if I could do more of Will Smith, I would be a better hitter, because he's just short, compact, and it's remarkable. And yeah, so he wouldn't derby guy. I'm sure I've seen him hit batting practice, and I obviously guys can hit. I actually wouldn't be surprised if Justin Turner could do pretty well in a home run derby, because in batting practice, he'll get these, when he gets a high inside pitch, he loves yanking these homers in BP over towards the bullpen in left field. Just the little 375-foot home runs that just clear the wall in left field. But, I think he could do 30 of those in 4 minutes. But yeah, it was interesting. One thought I had during the derby was, I feel like they need to do the seeding different, because they just do it based on how many home runs you have this year. But that's not always accurate. Sometimes a guy was hurt. Sometimes, J-Rod didn't hit any home runs the first month of the season. And so, his overall home run total is down compared to some of the other guys. But obviously, the fact that he didn't hit any in the first month and he's hit whatever 17 in the last 2 months, that's a lot of home runs. And so, like, I mean, I feel like the defending champion, if he's in it, he ought to be the 1 seed. And I don't know how they would do it, but Albert Pujols was clearly the right 8 seed here, uh, for a lot of different reasons. But the other seeds, it's like, uh, I don't know. It was a
I
bummer
wouldn't
to
mind
see.
them leaving the top 4 seed, but then they get to pick their opponent.
Maybe that's it. Like,
Because like
I
the
didn't
NBA
like.
went to picking teams, and it's made it more fun because that's an extra piece of content for the NBA to showcase.
Yeah, I felt like Alonso against Acuna in the first round was kind of like the Dodgers against the Giants in the NLDS last year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
But it
but
was
yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
fun. It was a good derby. The changes they made in 2015 have definitely turned this from a snooze fest into this is really fun to watch. I'm looking forward to the home run derby.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Juan Soto, the winner. Juan Soto is the next subject. But first, Built Bars. From the people who invented healthy and tasty comes the latest gift to your taste buds. You've probably tried the amazing coconut brownie chunk Built Bar, but guess what? Your friends at Built have given that the Puffs treatment. Coconut brownie chunk puff. Built Bar flavor you love, and a deliciously chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. They just sent us some, and yeah, these are the Built Puffs are already my favorite of over Built Bars, and this part coconut. I'm usually not a coconut guy, but I've become a coconut guy over the last few years, and this one has enough of that coconut taste to make it good. So, but guess what? They're only here for a limited time. So go to built.com right now to make sure you don't miss out because they're going fast. Because why? Because they taste amazing. You already know all the health benefits. We've told you plenty of times. If you haven't, go check out all the macros online and go get your puffs right now. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15. You'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 at built.com for 15% off. All right, Jeff. So this story that we're going to talk about next happened over the weekend, but we wanted to talk about it together. And it fits a very good segue since Juan Soto won the home run derby. Juan Soto has been the talk of the last few days, and Juan Soto will now be the subject of this segment. And it's the fact that he turned down a 15-year, $440 million offer from the Nationals. And after that, they had already upped that from a 300 and something million offer from before. And with that rejection came the report that the Nationals will now make him available for trade. And right away, the Dodgers are always one of those teams that get linked to everybody because they usually have a strong farm system and or the financial wealth to do so. So the Dodgers have been named, the Cardinals have been named, other teams have been named, and yeah, the Juan Soto sweepstakes is open and ready to go. I personally don't think it's going to happen this year, but you probably feel the same way. But yeah, Jeff, let's just talk about Soto in general, and then we'll get into, what it would cost the Dodgers to get Juan Soto.
Yeah, Juan Soto is a great player, absolutely outstanding, one of the best hitters in baseball, maybe the best hitter in baseball. I think, I said probably a year and a half or so ago on Twitter, somebody said, well, Mike Trout's clearly the best hitter in baseball. And I said, he might be, but it might be Juan Soto. And I said then, I believe at some point Juan Soto will be the best hitter in baseball, and we'll look back at what point did that happen? Did he become the best? And it might have already happened. He is so good defensively. He's not bad. He's not great, but he's not bad, and he is more than good enough offensively to make up for that. The Dodgers obviously don't need an outfielder right now, but they didn't need a first baseman when they signed Freddie Freeman. Juan Soto, even more than Freddie Freeman, is a guy you don't have to have a need for. You make room for Juan Soto if Juan Soto is available. That said, I don't think a trade is likely. I don't think it's likely that anybody will trade for Juan Soto simply because the prospect capital it would take to get him, it's not that he's not worth it, but it adds so much risk because Juan Soto is just one person. And to give up, I mean, I would be surprised if it took 6 really good prospects to get Juan Soto. Imagine trading 6 good prospects and then Juan Soto tears his ACL and he's out for a year. And then he comes back and, at one point he tweaks a hammy. He ends up playing for you a total of, about 1 full season. And then he hits free agency and leaves. And it's like, oh, That's what we gave away our future for, huh? And not that Juan Soto's not worth it. If he's healthy, he's going to be worth it. But that risk, putting all those eggs in that one basket, it was so much easier for the Dodgers last year to trade away their top two prospects because they got Scherzer and Trey Turner back. If they had traded those two guys for Scherzer, yeah, you could still make the case that Scherzer's worth it. But then when Scherzer can't take the ball in the NLCS, it's like, wait, we give up our two top prospects for that? And there was still a little bit about that, but there was also, oh, we also have Trey Turner, one of the best shortstops in baseball. We get a year of him too. And so I think it's highly unlikely that any team will meet the Nationals asking price simply because of that risk involved. It's a really good way for a GM to get himself fired if Juan Soto gets hurt. And I don't think GMs are going to want to put their job in, Juan Soto's health's hands, if health has hands. And the one exception would be unless the Nats decide to go cheapo and try to save some money, because the Dodgers are definitely a team that could say, hey, that Steven Strasburg contract that sucks, we'll take that off your hands. That Patrick Corbin's contract that sucks, we'll take that off your hands. And here's one good prospect and one solid prospect, and we'll take those two guys and we'll take your Juan Soto. But that would kind of be like the Red Sox owner selling Babe Ruth to the Yankees.
That would be a slight reincarnation of the Adrian Gonzalez deal. They took on Josh Beckett, they took on Carl Crawford. Adrian Gonzalez not as good as Juan Soto, but he was good at the time. And yeah, I mean that's.
Wait,
I feel like
can I just pause? Adrian Gonzalez is not as good as Juan Soto. Might be the understatement of the history of this podcast. Just for the record.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those where I've been asked a lot the last few days from people like, "Oh, do you want the Dodgers to get Juan Soto or whatever?" And it's like the Dodgers. Yeah, I was like, it's one of those where if they don't get him, I'm not mad. If they do get him, I'm not mad because the Dodgers are going to be good regardless. They don't need Juan Soto. Juan Soto is a luxury. And like I said, prospect capital that it would take, people were asking, and I said, hypothetically, if they could keep one of Cartaya Miller and one of Pajes Vargas and still get a deal done for Juan Soto, then I'm probably doing that deal, even if, if it costs you 6 guys, because you're keeping at least 2 of those 4. Realistically, I don't know what the Nationals are asking for. All we see is these exorbitant prices, but realistically, when have those exorbitant prices ever been met in some of these trades that, or in other deals and other things that have happened in the past? Doesn't happen most of the time. The Nationals, on the flip side, he's still under control for 2.5 more years, so they're not necessarily in a rush. If they can find a desperate team at the deadline that wants to make a splash and can get an oversell or an overbid, then they'll do it. But if not, I'm sure they still have 2.5 years or 2.5 years to try to get some value for him. Obviously, the value goes down the more they wait, but it's also a matter of at some point you might find yourself with more fair value than they can ask for right now. And when it comes down to the Dodgers, it's a matter of, it comes down to you're already paying Mookie Betts, you're paying Freddie Freeman for 5 years after this, and it would be probably Soto or Trey Turner in that sense, and then you're looking at 3 guys that take up close to 100 mil, which, like I said, Dodgers wise, it doesn't necessarily matter too much. It's a matter of that's why I think the financial implications, if like they did take the Strasburg deal on, it's in order to get Juan Soto for cheaper. But it's not necessarily to get Juan Soto and keep him because, there would be a lot of money tied up for like 3 years where they all overlap, where Freeman, Strasburg, Mookie, and then Soto's new deal would all overlap. So there's a lot going on. Soto also is a Boris client, so it's not like you can trade for him with the hopes of having an extension unless you overpay, because you have to overpay if you want him. So there's a lot of moving parts here, and it's one of those. The Dodgers tomorrow, I wake up and Juan Soto's a Dodger, I'm going to be ecstatic, even if they do trade all their prospects, because that's just the nature of what it is. But, if Juan Soto gets traded somewhere else, and it's not, the Cardinals, which would be annoying, or any other contending team in the National League, then I'll be fine. I would be fine with it if he goes to somewhere else or the American League.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't even be surprised if they can get better value for him a year from now than they can now, simply because the price right now is going to price most teams out of even considering it, which then reduces the Nationals' leverage because there's not as many bidders. Whereas a year from now, if because obviously all 29 teams would love to have Juan Soto, And if a year from now you actually have 12 teams who are actually thinking, oh, this is actually realistic, maybe we could put together a deal for it, then they got to compete against each other. And maybe you actually get at least as good a deal, maybe an even better deal than they could get right now. Because right now, I don't think anybody's going to give up their top 6 or 7 prospects, unless it's a farm system that's already bad. And those guys, that wouldn't get Soto. So anyway, a lot to think about. And like you said, I'd be thrilled if they got him. But I used to joke when the Dodgers got Mookie Betts, I would have traded my grandma for Mookie Betts. But I don't know if I would have traded 6 of my grandma for Mookie Betts, and that's what it's going to take to get Soto.
Yeah, and the other part is the longer they wait, the closer he is to free agency. He's already turned down 440 mil, regardless if it was spread over 15 years. That's still 440 mil guaranteed. So what he's going to be looking for, and he's taking a big risk too. What he's going to be looking for, and he's probably going to get 25, 30 mil in arbitration in the next couple of years. But yeah, it's wild all around, and I don't think it's going to come to a conclusion here in the next 2 weeks. And Juan Soto is just going to have to be a really good player and a really bad team for the rest of this year.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Anything else before we head out, Jeff?
No, except it's Kershaw Day.
Kershaw Day. The next time we talk, Clayton Kershaw will have pitched 1 or 2 innings for the National League team, and hopefully the National League can get a win. It's been a struggle the last few years, and hopefully Dodger pitchers can come back with clean innings because that's also been a struggle the last few years. So putting our faith in Kershaw, we'll see if any other guys get on the mound. We'll definitely see Mookie Betts and Trey Turner, who are both starting. Mookie Betts starting in center field, I think. Batting second, starting center field. So fun stuff all around, all-star game. That's all we got for today. Thank y'all for listening today, for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. Check out Locked On MLB Prospects with host Lindsey Crosby. He's a prospect encyclopedia and is going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. Free and available wherever you get podcasts. Speaking of MLB stars of tomorrow, the Dodgers MLB Draft still going on. We'll have draft content later in this week. Probably calling on our guy Future Dodgers, who we've talked to the last few years with the Dodgers Draft, or somebody else. So we'll have that for you guys later this week. You can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. You can find Jeff on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Vince Samperio. The DMs are open on all those accounts if you need to get a hold of us. If you also need to get a hold of us a different way, there's email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or there's voicemail text at 323-863-5625. I blanked right now, but that's going to do.
We are here.
Yeah, we are here every weekday. We're here. I've had a long day.
We're here every weekday morning. We hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, Vince,
you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.